Team SoulBlazing. It's Team SoulBlaze blazing back in with another EDOPRO Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile. So I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, and burn out that subscribe button. So for this one, this deck profile is requested by Alexis Gonzalez. Sorry if I kind of said your name wrong. So this one is the Ancient Gear deck that I used against Karibo / Mandala when he was playing, I think, Neos? I'm not so sure. But anyways, let's get this started. So first off, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon. Level 9, 3000 attack, 3000 defense. If this card was summoned by tributing an Ancient Gear monster, attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage to your opponent, and if this card was tribute summoned by a gadget monster, it can make a second attack during each battle phase. If this card attacks your opponent's spells, or traps and monster effects cannot be activated until the end of the damage step. At the end of the damage step, if this card attacked, you can destroy 1 spell or trap on the field. That is useful. Okay, so first off, the gadget one is never going to happen in this deck. I can already tell you that much. So this card's only going to get 1 attack during the turn. But doing piercing damage is really good. Then nullifying spells and traps and monster effects. Mirror Force doesn't go off. Elemental Hero Sunrise, which I've had so much trouble with, has no longer effect on me, and Other Bull no longer works. So pretty much this card shuts down everything. And then it can destroy a spell or trap on the field. It can be your field, it can be your opponent's field. This card is worth using because certain cards in this deck when they're destroyed by effects, they let you search out for another Ancient Gear card. So that's useful on its own, but if you don't have those cards, you can just nuke an opponent's spell or trap. Here's a hint. If you're playing Neos and you don't have the cards that kill themselves, you don't have the cards that activate when they're dead, just destroy the field spell. Everything they have is going to go back at the end of the turn. So, hint, hint, Neos dies to this. But yeah, 3 copies of him. Next up, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Golem. So, he cannot be special summoned. If this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate any spells or traps until the end of the damage step. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage, 3000 attack, and 3000 defense, level 8. So, that's most of these Ancient Gear cards, like, they have something that restricts your opponent from using spells or traps, which kind of sucks for your opponent because that means they can't really stop anything. But that's good for you because they're all heavy hitters and they just beat the shit out of your opponent while they just watch helplessly. Ancient Gear Golem is somewhat the ace card of this deck. By personal meaning and by who's actually better, it's Ancient Gear Reactor. But if we're going by who actually lets us get out our big plays, then we're going by Ancient Gear Golem. So it really just depends. In my personal opinion, it's Reactor because he looks cool and he has a way better skill. But this thing leads to gateways to a lot of broken stuff. So 3 copies at all times. 3 copies of Ancient Gear Golem, Ultimate Pound. 3000 attack, 3000 defense, level 8, same as the last one. Cannot be special summoned. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage up to twice per turn. When this attacking card destroys a monster by battle, you can discard 1 machine monster. This card can get 1 attack. This card can attack again in a row. If this card is on field destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add 1 polymerization from your deck to your hand, and if you do, add 1 other Ancient Gear monster from your graveyard to your hand. Okay. That's useful, so let's break this down and explain it. So 1, it cannot be special summoned, which kind of sucks. But if he attacks, you can do piercing damage, and if he destroys a monster, you can do 2 attacks by discarding 2 machine monsters. Every monster in this deck is a machine. There is no way you're not going to be able to pull this off unless you have no hand cards, or unless you don't have monsters in your hand. But then, because he can attack multiple times, if they somehow survive that, if this card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can search your deck for 1 polymerization. Oh, whoops. Yeah. So that's the sucky part. There's no polymerization in this deck, but that's because I have enough fusion spells as is that kind of break the game enough. And you can add in another Ancient Gear monster from your graveyard to your hand. I don't think you have to add polymerization to your hand. Granted, I've never summoned this thing, but I don't think you need polymerization to be in your deck to be able to add something from your graveyard to your hand. If you do, I have some remodeling to do. But if you don't, that just means you can get a free Ancient Gear card back for no reason, which is good, so 3 copies. Also because you need Gear Golems to pull off some of the fusions, so obviously adding 3 copies of both Gear Golems is really useful. Next up is Ancient Gear Knight. Level 4, 1800 attack points, 500 defense. We run it at 3. This card is treated as a normal monster while face up on the field or in the graveyard. While this card is a normal monster on the field, you can normal summon it to have it become an effect monster with this effect. If it attacks, your opponent cannot activate spells or traps until the end of the damage step. So it pretty much locks down spells and traps. It's a good heavy hitter it's a good hit, it's a good attacker if you can't get out these guys right here. But he's mostly here because you don't want to run too many tribute monsters, and you just want a lot of level 4s. Well, I just like not running too many tribute monsters. These are here because they actually need to be here, but anything that's not required, I'm just putting them in because, well, I'm not going to put them in because they are not needed. So being able to summon monsters that aren't big, that aren't too heavy, but can still be summoned are really useful. So 3 copies. 3 copies of the best level 4 here, and frankly one of my favorites, Ancient Gear Wyvern. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add 1 Ancient Gear card from your deck to your hand except Ancient Gear Wyvern. Also, you cannot set cards for the rest of this turn. You can only use the effect of Ancient Gear Wyvern once per turn. If this card attacks, your opponent's monsters cannot activate their effects until the end of the damage step. Okay, so pretty much it does something different from other things because these guys nullify spells and traps. This thing only nullifies monster effects, but that's still useful. But at the same time, when you summon him, you can just search your deck for any Ancient Gear related card. Every card in this deck is Ancient Gear. This is pretty much on place by any means. Search the deck for whatever you want, which is really useful. But then, you cannot set for the rest of the turn, which kind of sucks. Here's the thing though, you can activate spells and traps though, as long as they're already on the field. Or, if you have cards that you want to set before you play this, just set them and then play it, because you kind of got around that rule. So, pretty good card all around, 3 copies. Next up, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Frame. You can discard 1 card from your hand. 600 attack points, 500 defense, 3 copies. You can discard 1 card from your hand, add 1 Ancient Gear Golem or 1 spell or trap that specifically lists the card Ancient Gear Golem in its text from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Ancient Gear Frame once per turn. If this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate spells or traps until the end of the damage step. If this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can special summon up to 3 Ancient Gear Golem or Ancient Gear Golem Ultimate Pound from your hand, ignoring the summoning cost. So, that's good though, because 1, since even though these cannot be special summoned, thanks to this card it gets around that, but 2, you can either search for Ancient Gear Golem, which allows you to access all of your ultimate fusions, or you can search for a spell or trap that lists Ancient Gear Golem. I'll give you a hint, I'm pretty sure all the fusions on this deck have something to do with Ancient Gear Golem, which means you can effectively just get a free Ancient Gear Golem for no apparent reason. So, all around, good card, searches for your aces, 3 copies. Next up, Ancient Gear Soldier. 1,300 attack points, 1,300 defense points, level 4, 3 copies. If this card attacks, your opponent can activate spells or traps until the end of the damage step. He's just here because, once more, spell or trap thing, kind of spacey, and level 4. So, and you just need cards for fusion targets at this point, so 3 copies. Next up, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Box. If this card is added from your deck or graveyard to your hand except by drawing it, you can add 1 Earth Machine monster from your... You can add 1 Earth-type machine monster with 500 attack and defense points from your deck to your hand except Ancient Gear Box. You can only use this effect once per turn. That's useful because I'm pretty sure, yep, it can search for Ancient Gear Frame. So, if you can add this to your hand by any means, you can basically search for this thing for free. So, all around good card. Decent. It's not the best, but it's still a good card, so 3 copies. Finally, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Hunting Hound. If this card is normal summoned, you inflict 600 points of damage to your opponent. If this card attacks, your opponent can activate spells or traps until the end of the damage step. Once per turn, you can fusion summon 1 Ancient Gear Fusion type monster from your extra deck using materials from your hand or field as fusion materials. So, I have never used this personally. Frankly, I didn't even know what this did until now. But still, good card all around. 3 copies. He does help you with fusion, so basically you have 9 polarizations or maybe 12, depending on what one of the trap cards do. So, good card all around. Also, this just occurred to me, this deck does use anime cards, so yeah, if you want to play this deck to its best, use the anime cards. Next up, 3 copies of Spell Gear. Send 3 Ancient Gear cards you control to the graveyard. You can special summon up to 1 Ancient Gear Golem from your hand or deck, ignoring the summoning cost. Then destroy all monsters you control except Ancient Gear Golems. You cannot normal summon or set till the end of your next turn. That is still useful, because you can bring out 2 Ancient Gear Golems just by sending 3 Ancient Gear cards you control. All these cards are Ancient Gear, so you can send literally anything and it will still count. Then you get 2 Golems from it, and then you can nuke everything else that you control that's a monster besides the Golems, and then you can just beat the shit out of them with it. Granted, you can't normal summon or set till the next turn, but still, that's really useful. So 3 copies. Next up, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Explosion. Target 1 Ancient Gear monster you control, destroy it, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to half that original attack points. So you really only use this if you need something to sack, or if for example you just wanted to get something in your graveyard. I forgot the play I did with this, but something works if it gets into your graveyard. Pretty much use it, sack a card, and then deal damage. So for example, Golem, like say you can't attack for some reason, just use this to sack it and then blow them up. Next up is Ancient Gear Catapult. Have yet to use it, but still, it's a good card. While you control no monsters, target 1 face-up card you control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon 1 Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions, basically saying bring out Golem with it. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 face-up card you control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon 1 Ancient Gear token, Machine type, Earth, level 1, attack and defense are both 0. You can only use this effect once per turn. So that's useful though, because if you have nothing, you basically get Golem out for free. And then you can do a lot of broken plays with it. You can get a Polymerization active. You can get a Search and Trap combo that I believed I used in the video with Ancient Gear versus Neos. And all around, it's a good card, so 3 copies. Next up, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Workshop. Target 1 Ancient Gear monster in your graveyard, add that target to your hand. So it pretty much allows you to get Ancient Gears back. Really useful because you need those Ancient Gears, so 3 copies. Now on to one of the cards that made Mandala/Karibo surrender against me in a really broken fashion. Ancient Gear Fusion. Fusion summon 1 Ancient Gear Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion materials. If you use Ancient Gear Golem or Ancient Gear Golem Ultimate Pound you control as a fusion material, you can also use monsters from your deck as fusion material. So if you have one of these 2 big boys on your field, you can essentially fusion summon anything in your extra deck at any cost because it literally lets you. Which is awesome because brokenness exists. And all around a good card, so 3 copies, obviously. Next up, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Scrap Fusion. Fusion summon 1 Ancient Gear Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your graveyard as fusion materials, but its effects are negated. Here's the play I did against Karibo/Mandala when I was using Ancient Gears. This fight was off screen. So my opening hand was like these 2. I had 2 of these things and then 1 of this thing, and then I had this thing in hand, and then I had this thing in hand. Wait, no, I had this thing, I had this thing, and then I had something over here. So then I summoned this thing, brought about this thing, then fusion summoned with this, then fusion summoned again, then fusion summoned again, and I had enough attack points to kill him, so he just flat out surrendered because there was no point in living. But anyways, good card, 3 copies, and it just leads to combos with this. Next up, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Castle. All Ancient Gear monsters gain 300 attack points. Each time a monster is normal summoned or set, place 1 counter on this card. If you tribute summon an Ancient Gear monster face up, you could tribute this card instead if the number of its counters is equal or greater than the number of required tributes. Which is useful because, granted, you lose the attack point boost, but you can bring out Golem for easier, and you can bring out Reactor easier. I kind of misplayed before on the video because I didn't remember that effect, and I could have brought out Reactor a few turns earlier, but I'm an idiot, so it's all around a good card, so 3 copies. Next up, 3 copies of Gear Town, a required card for this deck because it's really broken in terms of combos. Both players can normal summon Ancient Gear monsters for 1 less tribute. This is where the misplayed ensued with the Reactor thing. And when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 Ancient Gear monster from your deck, hand, or graveyard. So pretty much, destroy it with Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon, search your deck for another Ancient Gear Reactor, beat the shit out of your opponent, or Golem, or another Golem. Pretty much, summon Reactor, use it to blow up this field spell, get out something else, and then just screw over your opponent. Now on to trap cards. 3 copies of Ancient Gear Reverse Fusion. If an Ancient Gear monster you control leaves the field by opponent's card effect, target one of those monsters, special summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck that lists that monster as a fusion material, and it's counted as a fusion summon. So pretty much, call it an Ancient Gear Golem or Ancient Gear Hunting Hound, have it die, and then just use this to bring out either bring out one of the 4 Ancient Gear Golem fusions or 2 of the Ancient Gear Hunting Hound fusions, so one of the 2. So next up is Unfinished Ancient Gear. Special summon 1 Ancient Gear monster from your hand in defense position, ignoring its summoning conditions, but its attack and defense becomes half. Also, it cannot be destroyed by battle this turn. So normally you do this as like a last line of defense, or like you do it to bring out a golem because you need to, or like a reactor just to bring out a stronger one next turn. So either way, good card, 3 copies. Finally, Ancient Gear Reborn, the card I did combos with. Once per turn, if you control no monsters, you can target one Ancient Gear monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and if you do, gains 200 attack points. Even if this card leaves the field, you can only control one Ancient Gear Reborn on your field. So pretty much, here's what you do. You bring out one of these heavy hitters. You make sure this trap card's already activated, by the way. You bring out one of these heavy hitters, and you make sure it's the only monster on your field. You explosive it, and then they take damage equal to its attack points. Then you use this thing's effect to bring whatever one you killed back to the field, and then you just beat the shit out of them with it. So, amazing card, 3 copies. Now on to the fusions. So, by the way, everything in the extra deck, well, the extra deck fusions are just the cards I couldn't add in before. So first off, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Ballista. So he's a Link monster, link 2 Earth Machine type monsters to bring him out. If this card is Link summoned, you can add 1 Ancient Gear monster or 1 Gear Town from your deck to your hand. You can target 1 Spiral Trap you control and 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. Destroy the card that you control, and if you do, change that monster's attack and defense points to 0 until the end of the turn. And you can only activate this effect once per turn. So pretty much summon it, get out Gear Town, activate Gear Town, weaken a heavy hitter, destroy Gear Town, bring out Reactor, Reactor attacks, blow up a card or something, and beats the shit out of them. All around good card, and his attack points are 1500. So next up, but I never really bring them out because you're mostly just going to be hitting them with fusions. Next up is 2 copies of Double Ancient Gear Hunting Hound. So it requires 2 Hunting Hounds, basically. If this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate spells or traps until the end of the damage step. Once per turn, if a monster is normal or special summoned to your opponent's side of the field, quick effect, you can place 1 gear counter on that monster, max 1. And at the start of the damage step, if a monster with a gear counter battles, you can destroy that monster. So pretty much, if your opponent attacks with a special summoned monster, it's going to die, which is all the while useful. So 2 copies. Also, and it's 1400 defense and 1000 attack. So pretty much not used for heavy hitters, just used to weaken opponents' fields. Next up, 2 copies of Triple Ancient Gear Hunting Hound. It requires either requires 3 Hunting Hounds or it requires a Hunting Hound and a double Hunting Hound. It has 1800 attack points and 1000 defense points. If this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate spells or traps until the end of the damage step. This card can make up to 3 attacks on monsters during each battle phase. So pretty much it's only used for, I guess, aggressiveness and just in case, you know, spells or traps null and it gets to that point where your opponent has weak enough cards for it to hit. Next up is 2 copies of Ancient Gear Howitzer. 2 Ancient Gear monsters, any will work for this thing. Unaffected by other card effects, during your main phase you can inflict 1000 points of damage to your opponent. You can only use this effect once per turn. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 Ancient Gear from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. So bring out a Golem if you so wish, or a Reactor Dragon. Pretty much, if you get any chance to special summon anything from your deck, bring out either the Golems or the Reactor Dragon. So just do it based on the situation. If you have Gear Town active, always bring out Reactor. But if you don't have Gear Town, you can base it on anything else, but you probably should bring out one of the Golems. Next up is Ultimate Ancient Gear Hunting Hound. It requires a triple Hunting Hound and 1 Ancient Gear monster. So you need at least this thing on the field to pull it off. So that's mostly the reason why it's here. And then you need anything else. So it has 2800 attack points and 2000 defense points. If this card is fusion summoned, half your opponent's life points. So right there, the life points are 8000. Boom! Summon it, 4000 life points left. That's simple. It can make up to 3 attacks during each battle phase against anything. And if this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate spells or traps until the end of the turn. So pretty much, this is only here to bring out this, and this is only here to bring out this. Broken card, 2 copies, really useful. Next up is 1 copy of Ancient Gear Megaton Golem. 3300 attack points, 3300 defense points. You need 3 Ancient Gear monsters of any kind. If this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate spells or traps to the end of the damage step. If this card is fusion summoned using 2 or more Ancient Gear Golem or Ancient Gear Golem Ultimate Pound, then it can make up to 3 attacks. It can attack as many times as those cards combined during each battle phase. If this face-up fusion summon card is in the owner's control, leaves the field because of its opponent's card effect, you can special summon 1 Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem from your extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. So first off, that's really useful. It can attack multiple times as long as 1 or more Ancient Gear Golem was used in its fusion summoning. It's really powerful. If your opponent kills it by effects, you get to bring out a stronger monster, and it can just stop spells or traps when it attacks. But your question may ask, what is an Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem? This is Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem. Here's what this thing does. Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, 4,400 attack points and 3,400 defense points. It's already a really big heavy hitter. This thing can get over Obelisk really, so this thing screws it over. It requires an Ancient Gear Golem and 2 Ancient Gear monsters, but if this thing dies by effects, you can get it for free. So, must be fusion summoned. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage. If this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate spells or traps until the end of the damage step. If this card is destroyed, you can target 1 Ancient Gear Golem in your graveyard, special summon it, ignoring its summoning conditions. So pretty much, this dies by effects, you get this out, and if this dies by some reason, you can get this out. So, essentially, your opponent is screwed if this dies once, this gets stronger. And if they somehow get over this by any means, you can just get out another golem and then redo it, except get out bigger numbers. Because this thing exists. Chaos Ancient Gear Ancient Gear Giant. 4 Ancient Gear monsters to summon it, 4,500 attack points, 3,000 defense points. Must be fusion summoned, it cannot be special summoned by other ways. Unaffected by spell and trap effects. Your opponent's monsters cannot activate their effects during the battle phase. This card can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each, and if this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage to your opponent. So, a really big heavy hitter that you can just use to wipe out everything on the face of the earth, and just basically a good card all around. So 1 copy. Extra deck. 1 copy of Hunting Hound, because just in case we need to bring up this thing quicker. 1 copy of Triple Hound, because just in case we need to bring out this thing quicker. 1 copy of Houtriser, just in case we need to do more burn damage or we need more Ancient Gear cards. 1 copy of Ultimate Ancient Gear Hunting Hound, because he's just that good. 1 copy of Megaton Golem, just in case we actually need it. 2 copies of Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, just in case that situation arises. And 2 copies of Chaos Ancient Gear Giant, just in case this happens to be the only card that can beat the shit out of the opponent. Next up, we have 3 copies of Ancient Gear Fist. Equip only to an Ancient Gear monster. At the end of the damage step, if the equipped monster battled an opponent's monster and is still on the field, destroy the monster it battled. So pretty much, even if the thing has like battle destruction prevention, like Cloudians, they're still going to die to it, so there's no point even trying to avoid it. 3 copies of Chaos Ancient Gear Fusion. This is in here because why not, and I kind of just realized you need polymerization for this, but it's still useful. I'm probably going to attack polymerization to this deck later. So send 1 polymerization from your hand to the graveyard, then reveal 1 Ancient Gear Fusion monster in your extra deck. Banish a number of monsters from your graveyard that were special summoned from the extra deck equal to its fusion materials, and if you do special summon its fusion materials from the deck, extra deck, or graveyard, ignoring the summoning conditions, but their effects are negated, then fusion summon the chosen fusion monster using the summoned monster's fusion materials. So pretty much, send polymerization to the graveyard, get out any big boy, this thing, literally get out anything in this extra deck, and then just summon it. So all around, good card. You do need polymerization for this. I say just take out this thing for it if you want, because it's not really that useful. And just all around good card if you really just need it. But this deck works as fine as it does. Well, that was the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment down other deck profiles you want to do or fights that you guys want to see. And don't forget to blaze up the subscribe button. So I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to keep your souls blazing.